Sure thing. Nice
Good
background.
morning. Oh, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to Slang podcast. I'm Preston Frazier, and this is a special treat for me. I'm talking to Vernon A. Reid about his new album, Hoodoo Telemetry. I, of course, am a fan of Living Color. Uh, and I'm also a fan of Vernon's solo work, the work you've done with a number of your side groups as well. But one thing that started and were influenced me starting this podcast, I think 4 or 5 years ago, was the Field Negro Guide to Arts and Culture podcast
Oh, a
with
deep
W.
cut.
Kamau Bell. It was a great discussion about arts and cultures, a great discussion
Yeah,
about music, about what was going on. And that was, God, that must have been 13 years ago, I guess. I don't know.
it's incredible. Yeah, I know. It's wild. Yeah,
But it was
yeah.
it was a great podcast, and it showed another side of you, which if you see you on social media, you get to know more about you beyond just living color. Um, so Voodoo Telemetry, which will be out when this podcast comes out,
Yeah.
Hoodoo Telemetry. It's a wonderful album. But I want to ask you why now with a solo album? Because I know you've had a history of some great solo albums with
Yeah.
working with Mask in the what was it, the three piece you did with, I think it was called Freaky Free Form Freaky Frequencies. Why now?
Freeform Funky Freaks. The
Funky
Freeform Funky
Freaks.
Freak. Yeah, and the Yohimbi Brothers with DJ Logic. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So why a solo album now?
It had been a while since I'd done one, and this was so. It took a while to do it, and it was really I started it before the pandemic, and the pandemic just kind of threw everything that everybody was doing, it threw all the cards up in the air. And then there was really personal event that happened. My longtime friend and colleague Greg Tate passed away on December 7th, 2021. And that was a seismic event in my life. It still is very much resonating. I was very close to him and his brother Brian, the Tate family. I knew his parents, and when you have a friend um, for that long and the impact, because we talked about culture at all different levels and discussed it and argued back and forth and influenced each other and convinced each other. And I mean, I cherished just his mind. And he was a co-founder of the Black Rock Coalition. He wrote the manifesto for the Black Rock Coalition. Um, so that day was funny because Living Color, we were the day of his passing. And I didn't know he had passed until I got a terrible phone call from his brother's wife, Maureen Mayen, who wrote the book The Right to Rock. But we were doing a thing with Mike Garcid, who was the MD for David Bowie. And Bowie had passed in 2016. It was horrible. And there were a bunch of different tributes that rolled out. And we were doing Young Americans with David Sanborn, rest in peace to him. He's passed, right?
Yeah.
We were doing Young Americans and we were doing I'm Afraid of Americans. Those were our two tunes. And I was in a car, like a town car, and we're going to it. And I remember hearing Paul Simon's The Mother and Child Reunion, which is one of my favorite songs of his. And it's a very somber, so it was his attempt at a kind of certain kind of reggae music, but
Mhm.
it's a very mysterious and somber type of tune. And it really, I felt this wave of emotion on hearing it, and the chorus is so haunting. So anyway, all that to say, his passing affected Hoodoo Telemetry, and in a way, and I didn't realize this until the record was done. Is I wanted to make a record that my friend would like. I wanted to make a record that Greg Tate would like. I actually sing on one song, and my wife and Greg used to always encourage me to sing more. I sang. I
Hmm.
originally, Living Color was a trio, and I was so self. I needed someone that could sing. I can carry a tune, but I need someone that could holler and shake the walls. I'm not that guy. And I remember meeting Corey Glover, and the rest is history about that. But it's a funny thing because there have been a few people that said, "Man, I like your voice. You should really sing." And I'm self-conscious, but I did it. This tune in effigy is really, like like that. Like doing that because Greg always used to tell you should sing and all that to say that affected it. So why now? I mean, there's no time like the present, and also honestly, that's one of the reasons. The reason I kind of stopped waffling about this or that, and I finished this record is partly because of losing Greg Tate.
And I was watching a movie a while ago. I think it was, I was reading a book. It was Booker T. Jones's book, Time is
Mm,
Tight. And he talks about the fact that he wants to get that music out there now because, we won't be around forever. But you have been so busy. I mean, you have been on tour a lot with Living Color, which, as a fan, certainly appreciate that. And
yeah.
then if you look at your discography with your solo discography, your side groups, Living Color, you have really been nonstop. Even the Living Color took a break. So coming back to the new album, how did you for Hoodoo Telemetry? How did you reach out to Ivan Julian, who co-produced it with it? How did you get involved?
It's so funny. Ivan Julian, who is a punk rock legend in his own right, he was a guitarist with Richard Hell and the Voidoids, and he was one of the few black musicians, like they were like Buster Jones who played bass with Talking Heads. There were was one of the few black musicians that was on the scene, on the punk scene. And when I
Mhm.
got to know him some years back, he was cool. He was very nice to me, and he became a world-class engineer. He's a great engineer, and I credit him with co-producing this record because we recorded partly at Super Giraffe Sound, and some of this record is live tracks. Some of this is taking some older tracks and changing drums, changing bass,
Mhm.
doing live stuff with it. He was down. He was down for all the different processes that were involved with making the record, and he made everything better. And his suggestions were on point, and he hung with it, over the years that it took to make this record. And I also I want to give a shout out to Stu Fine, who was A&R and from Mascot, and he was incredibly patient and was like, "Yo, you got to do." And he actually mentioned the idea that I did a track, and it said it reminded him of Mistaken Identity, which is a track, album I did back in the days. And there really is a kind of DNA linking the two records, and one of the bits of that is Scotty Hard, who mixed the record. He was an engineer on Mistaken Identity, and he mixed the whole album. I mean, he mixed Hoodoo Telemetry. So yeah, Ivan is someone I look up to, and is a kindred spirit. And he survived in that environment. He's one of the people. There's so many artists and people who made it possible for Living Color and for me to do what I do. I mean, the Bad Brains, I give credit to the Bad Brains. Meeting up, and working with the legendary Jack Bruce,
Yeah.
extraordinary. I mean, and part of this thing is, like we recently did a show in down at the Jersey Shore, Living Color and P Funk and Parliament Funkadelic. The first record I bought with my own money was Cosmic Slop, and
Oh, wow.
the first, what I mean, and the first concert I ever saw was seeing Funkadelic, Rare Earth, and War at Madison Square Garden. So in a lot of ways, this whole idea of black rock was really very, I mean, it was very present. It wasn't like, it's kind of like the idea that after Hendrix it ended. That was not the case. That just simply was not the case. And for me, and thinking about like the Isley brothers, I hold Ernie Isley in the highest regard. And
Mhm.
and Ernie Isley was denied his rightful place amongst the 70s, guitar gods. He should have been right up there, with all of those cats, Rory Gallagher, I mean, and all of those artists that were lionized in the 70s, Leslie West. He should have been there because he kept that post Hendrix sound alive on hit records. It's not that he was a respected guitarist and that. No, no, he was on commercially successful records that were that the public bought, and he never got a cover of Guitar World or Guitar Player. He was, in his prime, he was summarily ignored. And
Right.
so anyway, all of that to say, they're just what led to me being me and doing what I do is, so many. Ivan Julian, is one of the people that I credit with that.
Well, thank you for mentioning Mistaken Identity too from 1996, because that is such a fantastic album. And it's so, I think it's different. It's obviously different than what you were doing with Living Color. I think that was a
Yeah,
time when you guys were on a
yeah,
hiatus. And
yeah, yeah,
then Known Known Unknown in 2004, another wonderful one, and then Other True Self, which I hadn't
yeah,
listened to in a while. I listened to it yesterday, 2006. You mentioned
yeah.
the Freeform Freaky Free
Freeform Funky Freaks. Yeah, we had Irving
Freeform
McDonald.
Funky
Yeah,
Freaks.
Freak. Yeah,
That's
yeah, with Jamal D.
2007.
Tacuma. Yeah, Jamal D. Tacuma and Calvin Weston. That's a that's a completely different thing. It's a completely
Yep, three
improvised
piece.
thing. Yeah, like we recently did a residency at John Zorn's place, The Stone, and the Freeform Funky Freaks. The whole thing is, it was literally the 79th time we've ever played together, including the albums. We've only played when we've either recorded a record or played live in front of people. And it was just one of these wild things that happened. So there's like, high concept nonsense
Yeah, and
that
then I need to mention too the album we did with Jack Bruce and
oh,
Cindy
Black
Blackman
Santana
Santana.
and John
Wow.
Medeski. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
and John
yeah.
Mayeski.
So yeah, yes. So that's Spectrum Road, and we
Right.
made the record with Jack Bruce, and that was incredible. That was 2012. That was incredibly special. It was incredibly special because I've been playing with Jack in this band, his band, the Queekland Express. I was in a band with him in and Bernie Worrell, the legendary keyboards of
Mhm.
P Funk, Bernie Worrell.
Yeah,
And
Mr. Clavinet.
El Negro Hernandez and Robbie Amin on drums, and it was just incredible. And Richie Flores on congas. It was a great, great, great band. And we were on the tour bus, and I was just started asking him about what life was like, and he was fascinated. He said, "Oh yeah, man, we." There was no infrastructure for any of it. Like the business was being built, the concert business was being built around them as they toured. I mean, they used to
Mhm.
leave a venue with duffel bags filled with $1 bills because concerts were like $2. You know what I mean? Accountancy hadn't picked up. Like all those guys bought castles. You know what I mean? All those guys bought castles, like Jeff Beck and all of them, and then they couldn't heat them. And then they wound, almost all of them wound up in problems with the tax authorities. It's pretty
Right.
wild. And he met Tony Williams, and he just became incredibly enamored of Tony Williams, and he had a record that he was making, and he abandoned his record to go play with Tony Williams in Tony
Wow.
Williams' lifetime. And he at one point he told me the story. All the Motown people used to tour
Mhm.
with the British invasion people. And at one point, he became friends, like Marvin Gaye was really good friends with him and was really good friends with Mick Jagger. And at one point, Marvin Gaye said to Jack, "I want to start a band." I want to start a band and I want you to play bass. And 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 Cream had just started, and he said it was the worst day of his life because he had to turn Marvin Gaye down. Because Marvin even then wanted to get out from under Berry Gordy's control. And he was really into what the bands were doing. So yeah, so there's all that history, and that was a wonderful project. And I was we were so Jack was such a wonderful being, such an incredible musician,
Mhm.
but he was a real person, and it was an honor to work with him, and one of my life's pleasures to know him.
So you mentioned that you started Hoodoo Telemetry pre-pandemic. What was the first song you completed for the project, or first song you wrote for the project?
Well, okay, what was the first song? What was the first song I decided was going to be on Hoodoo Telemetry? So this is kind of like like some of the stuff is like going into my own personal vaults and finding things and going, you know what? This is finally it's time. I think Beautiful Bastard, Beautiful Bastard may be the first tune. And I did that
Okay.
and I did that with Rashid. And it was like kind of it was in a kind of demo state. And I decided to change it up. Like never liked the lead guitar I put on, but Rashid's vocals were outstanding. So that was something, and I said this. I finally want this out because it wasn't going to go on the Yohimbi Brothers record. It didn't really fit there, and that was an early track and then the Door of No Return, the instrumental that starts the record.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, yeah, that was maybe the next one. So this record kind of bounces between songs with lyrics and vocals, and instrumental pieces, and even the final piece, which is Brave New World, which features, the recorded vocals with Aldous Huxley, talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
oligarchy. I mean, it's wild because all we do is talk about oligarchy now. And it was like that early on. This lecture was from like the 50s or 60s, and he was talking
Hmm.
about the oligarchs who control everything. And that term wasn't in common parlance. And now that's in common parlance today.
Yeah, it's interesting. And you mentioned Door of No Return, the first track of the album,
Yeah.
which is basically it's a three-piece. And that
Yeah.
was recorded live.
Yeah, it was recorded. That was recorded live with I did that with Don McKenzie and yeah, Steve Jenkins.
Dave Jenkins on bass, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic song. Um, how is it? How do I put this? When you do a song like that, which is a three-piece song, do you think that could possibly work for Living Color, or do you feel the feels? I mean, how do you decide what's good
You
for
know
you
what?
versus for the
I
band?
probably could have recorded that with Will and Doug. you know, yeah, it's funny because we've never really we've done the odd I don't think we've done songs with long instrumental passages like This Is the Life,
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course we've done that, or Ignorance is Bliss, which is kind of a but yeah, that entered into that's another kind of space, even though that is, and Doug actually does play on the record. He plays on the tribute to Ornette or Not. And he added bass. That's an old track that I did with Micah Goff, this amazing sax player, Micah Goff. And I changed I changed the drum, and Doug Wimbish put the bass on it. And yeah, it's because also it's kind of a tribute to the kind of playing of a Sonny Sharrock, and also, Blood, and as well Ronald Shannon Jackson. My professional life
Right.
begins with Ronald Shannon Jackson, and he played with Ornette Coleman, and so last night I saw Joe Lovano quartet with Will Calhoun's playing drums, and Santi Debriano and Julie Lang on guitar, and And man, what a great band. And they play I bring it up because they played one of my favorite Ornette Coleman songs, The Lawyers from the album Science Fiction. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Sidebar.
great stuff. That's all this is, a sidebar. I want to ask you about a few songs. I know you're running out of time here, but
I
what
am.
about in effigy?
Yeah, and that
That seems a little unusual. Talk
well
about it.
that's song well the thing about In Effigy is that it's about two views of the same event or the same events, right? He stands upon the hill, his weapon at his side. He takes a weary glance on the field where so many died. He survives another day. All he can do is sigh. No answers why. His battle cry. That's the viewpoint of the warrior on the hill. But
Mhm.
in the valley down below, the people have a very different view of the same person, right? In the valley down below, he is burned in effigy. That idea that the soldier is trying to survive or could be seen as a hero in one context is the embodiment of evil,
Mhm.
from the people that suffer, in another context. So it's basically war as the idea of skirmishes, war, and conflict, and how people are brought into this horrible situation, and the result of political intrigues. This it's kind of it's a sideways tribute to Machine Gun on a level, because Jimi Hendrix said, "Evil men make me kill you. Evil men make you. Evil men make me kill you. Evil men make you kill me, even though we're only families apart." And that idea of the soldier, the officer or the soldier on the hill, he may not have a personal gripe. He may not be involved in ethnic cleansing, but he's doing these things. He's following orders, and the result of those orders are horrendous and chaotic. And we live in that time in the present day. That is, we live there, and really, that's basically what the song is.
Yeah,
I have to,
absolutely.
we have to pick this back up
All
because
right.
can we do that? Because I would love to finish our interview. I have to run. Unfortunately, I have to run to the next one.
I certainly understand. I appreciate your time. I'll reach out to Steve again
Yeah, please.
and see
And
if
so,
he can
and,
set
and
something
let's
else.
yeah, and we just need. I think I would love to give you that 10 minutes that you lost because of the connectivity thing. Let's at least do that. Let's do another 10 or 20 minutes. And
Okay,
let's figure that out, and let's make it happen. It was a
that
pleasure
sounds
talking to
good.
you.
I
All right.
appreciate your time. You take care of yourself.
All
See
right.
you
All right.
soon.
Have a great weekend. Okay.
You
Bye
too.
bye.